Hi friends, welcome back to 5 Minute Modern, where in 5 minutes or less we learn about an important artist, artwork, or concept in the history of modern art. My name is Cindy, and today we're looking at the diverse cultural exchanges at work in the paintings of Wifredo Lam. Lam was born to multiracial parents in Cuba in 1902, the same year the island gained independence from Spain. The diversity of cultures in his birthplace and in his own ancestry would be hugely influential for Lam in later years. Though at the time of Lam's childhood, many formerly colonized nations like Cuba had seen the value of their own indigenous art practices repressed by the imperial powers of Europe. Lam left Cuba and moved to Spain in 1923 to pursue his artistic career, though he was forced to flee 15 years later when the Spanish Republic fell to the fascist regime of Francisco Franco in the Spanish Civil War. After fleeing Spain, Lam moved to France. It was actually in France where he would first draw inspiration from African and Latin American artworks. Shortly after his arrival in France, Lam befriended Pablo Picasso, arguably the most famous painter of the century. Like many European avant-garde artists in the early half of the 20th century, Picasso had developed a keen interest in the arts of African and Pacific nations. Given what we now know about colonialism and cultural appropriation, I think we should level some criticism at these European artists who appropriated artistic styles from the global South. And while I certainly don't approve of the appropriative nature of this trend or its underlying racist and Eurocentric assumptions, it did have the welcome side effect of introducing the traditional arts of African and Pacific nations to white audiences in Europe and America. Certainly, seeing African art celebrated by Picasso and others in the avant-garde artistic circles of Paris would be transformative for Wifredo Lam. Lam began adopting the mask-like faces and geometrically simplified forms of African sculpture, while also continuing to explore the same techniques as his European contemporaries. He explored the surrealist concept of automatic painting, while also drawing great influence from Cubism, as can be seen in the flattened forms and shallow depth of his work. However, as the Nazis invaded France in 1939, Lam found himself on the run from fascism once again. He and his fellow avant-garde artists fled to Marseille in search of a way out of the Nazis' warpath. After a grueling journey, including a 6-week internment in a prison camp, Lam finally made it back to his homeland of Cuba in 1941. As Lam returned to Cuba, newly inspired by the arts of the global South, perspectives on colonialism were rapidly shifting. Thinkers like Aimé Césaire, Leopold Senghor, and Leon Demas challenged European domination of the global South and rejected assimilation into European culture, insisting instead on the value of their own cultural heritage. Inspired to consider the importance of his own country's unique heritage, Lam began the most productive and singular phase of his career. He expressed the vibrant colors of the tropical flora native to Cuba in an expanded palette. And though he maintained the surrealist technique of blending human features with non-human ones, Lam often made his hybrids by anthropomorphizing the local vegetables and fruits that grew in Cuba. Though Lam's greatest source of inspiration would be found in the spiritual practices of Cuba and its neighbors. Borrowing freely from Haitian voodoo and Santeria, Lam painted horned figures representative of orishas, which are spirits that act as intermediaries between humans and the natural world. One of his most recurring images is the hybrid horsewoman, which can symbolize possession by an orisha in Santeria. The devotee is considered to be like a horse, ridden by the orisha spirit. Lam himself was agnostic, but perhaps in invoking possession by a Santeria spirit, he was making some comment about how captivated he was by the mysticism of Santeria practices. Or perhaps it was even a reflection of his broader preoccupation with Cuba's unique culture. He was able to use the avant-garde and intellectual techniques of Cubism and Surrealism to explore the ancient themes and connection to the natural world of Santeria and voodoo. The mystical and the modern cohere seamlessly. And that's what I love most about Lam's work. Inspiration from diverse cultures is blended together and painted by Lam in a unique style that feels to me as enchanting and mystical as Santeria must have been for Lam. I hope you enjoyed learning about this artist. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.